Hello again. Welcome to Tuesday evening prayer commentary for the fourth Sunday in Lent, also known as Mothering Sunday, Refreshment Sunday, where we're refreshed during this Lenten fast. We take a lull in the spiritual battle we are waging, and we remember we are free people. We are heirs and citizens of our mother city, Jerusalem above, the heavenly Jerusalem. Now, in our two readings today, we had our Old Testament readings from Jeremiah, and our New Testament is from Mark. Mark's really escalating into passion narrative, or getting close to it. But let's start with Jeremiah. Jeremiah, if you're familiar with the story, we are kind of at the end of the kingdom period for Israel, or as it is Judah, the southern kingdom of Judah, which has Jerusalem, the Holy Temple there. The sons of David are on the throne, or at least a puppet son of David. And as we know from Ezekiel and from Jeremiah and from other sources, the puppet king rebelled eventually from Babylon. So Babylon beat them up once in Judah, and then they beat them up again and carried them all off. There was a first wave of exiles and then a second wave. And we're in the midst of all of that. And things are escalating, things are not going well in Judah. And one of the things that's happening, we find out today, is a drought. Drought. Very dangerous. It leads to starvation. The gates languish. People are in mourning. Jerusalem cries up to God. The nobles want their servants to get water. There's none to have. Even the animals, the wildlife, is responding to this. You have like a doe abandoning the fawn because there's no way to provide for it. It's very dark, and kind of like when you watch nature documentaries, they sometimes have these episodes or these moments that are like, ooh. And interestingly, you read Job, God manages all of that. He has to make these decisions, kind of above our pay grade. But just a really bad drought. Leads to starvation, leads to hardship, weakness, problems for all the people. Leaves you susceptible to enemies, of course. And already, it's just bad. And the people cry out to God. They're like, save us for your name's sake. That's a very common thing, right? God put his covenant name on his people, his brand, if you will, and his name now is on the line. And it is biblical and correct that we call upon God to vindicate his name, to stand up for his name and save us. That's part of him preserving us and having his people. Is tied up in the worthiness of his name, if you will. He's done that. He's extended that in covenant to us. And the people are doing that. They're saying, well, save us. And don't be like, a vagabond guy comes in and leaves the next day. A guy who just puts up his tent and leaves, a traveler, a mighty man who can't save, doesn't come to rescue us. Prove that you're mighty, that you're in our midst. Don't forsake us. And God, in verse 10, says, I'll read it for you. Even so, they have loved to wander. Right, you're the unfaithful ones. I'm not the unfaithful one. Don't even think about accusing me of acting unfaithfully in this moment. I'm being very faithful to the covenant. Right, the covenant promises include blessings and punishments, and the punishments are unfolding as Israel, or Judah, as the case would be, southern Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah, has rebelled against God in idolatry, committed spiritual adultery. Right, if God is espousing a people, his bride, Jesus has his bride, the church, his covenant people, Israel. Right, we're talking about that. If that's the relationship, then idolatry is spiritual adultery. So, right, there's a lawsuit here. It's like Maury or Judge Joe Brown, something, divorce court sort of situation. It's bad. Israel, or Judah, has been unfaithful. Even Judah, the good one, has started to act like her sister, northern Israel, in unfaithfulness. The Lord does not accept them. Now he will remember their iniquity and call their sins to account. All right, you got to know that God cares about evil. He doesn't look at all the evil that his people are doing to one another, all the child sacrifice, all the temple prostitutes, all of the abuse of the land and of other people and of the weak, and of strangers trying to sojourn and worship God, even though they weren't of the covenant people, and folks who have land that are in a bad spot, and all these sorts of things, all these disobediences to the law, right? You think about the law, and if you disobey that, all the bad things that entails, and God doesn't look at that and say, whatever, I don't care, doesn't matter, I don't mind. He's not like that. Evil must be driven from his people first, and then the world. Right? He's actually on a mission. He's on the warpath. And when sin shows up in his own people, they have a redemptive role to play. It's worse in some sense. So he's seeking to chastise them, but he even knows, and he has to understand they're not going to turn around from this. And at this point, it's too late. Now has come the time for the hammer to drop, for the foot to fall, and deal out chastisement for the people because of God's justice, his righteousness. Now, when they go into exile, that's going to be the culmination of this. There's a conquest, and a lot of people die, and then exile, people go off into a strange land, Babylon. Daniel and all the rest, Esther, folks like that. When they do that, they have a choice. Are we going to continue to try to live like Gentiles, like we have been in the Holy Land? That's what got us in this place, and just become Babylonians, and be kind of left adrift from the covenant promise? Or are we going to really live this out, really be God's faithful people, and in fact, in this quarantine, of all things, this quarantine stage, be healed of our infirmities, become more holy, more devoted to God. And in fact, Ezekiel, the way he talks about it, is the younger generations would be better than the first that came out of the land. They were kind of like a fish in water. It was so, how do you say wet, right? You're so unrighteous. They have no reference point for ritual purity, for moral purity, for God's onlyness. They're so caught up in a corrupt system and a corrupt way of life. God's going to score that away by basically burning everything. He's going to let the land lie fallow for 70 years. And he's going to bring back people who've been chastened, who are devoted to his name, who stayed devoted to his name in exile, and come back and work from there. And the point being is, at least in this reading we've read from Jeremiah, God has said, no. I know you feel sorry. I know you're sad. I know you're miserable. But no, actually, my name's sake, if God's going to do anything with his name's sake, he's going to bring justice upon his own people who have been so unjust. So that's what's unfolding there in Jeremiah. In Mark, Mark's really been escalating towards the passion narrative. We are in Mark, I believe, 12? Yes, 12. So we've had the triumphal entry. We've had Jesus drive out the money changers from the temple. He's been doing parable of, his authority keeps being questioned. Why do you do these things? Why are you driving people from the temple? Why are you teaching? Why are you preaching? Because Jesus does have authority over the temple. He's the God of Israel. He's also the Messiah. We'll get to that in a second. We have the parable of the vine growers, where they kill all the messengers from the owner of the field, these vine dressers, and then they kill his own son that he sends as a messenger. He's taking on the Herodians, the Pharisees, the scribes, trying to catch him in his words, and that's when he has the coin situation. And then we start in 28. One of the scribes asks for the most important part of the law, most important commandment, and it's the Shema. Our hero is the Lord your God is one, Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Right, the whole summary of the law is in love. Speaking of 1 Corinthians 13, by the way, right, all the law is fulfilled in love. Then you move on to the scribe is actually jiving with Jesus. He's on this. He's on track. He says, to love the Lord and to love one's neighbor is much more than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. Yes, that is correct. And Jesus, says, you're not far from the kingdom, and no one ventures any more questions. They kind of are serious, and they actually kind of recognize the truth of his argument there. At least that's what I'm reading right now. And there's more going on here, obviously, especially in all these discourses that Jesus has leading up to his passion. Then we have the big stumper, right, where Jesus quotes Psalm 110:1. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, and I'll put your enemies beneath your feet. David says this in the Holy Spirit. How do you say, that Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed One, is the Son of David? Because David calls him Lord. So in what sense is he a son? Because, you are lower, usually, right? If you're a son, the Father's higher than you. It just goes all the way back. The fathers are greater than the son. Honor thy father and mother. So it's the Son of David is the Christ, the Messiah. How is he also David's Lord? How is David recognizing him as superior to himself? Because that's not how the dynamics usually work. David is the best king, pretty much, that Israel's ever had. He really had a heart. He was really a man after God's own heart. He kind of takes on a few priestly functions as well, as Solomon does too. But we see this, how is he better? How is he greater? How is, and the church has long understood this to be pointing to Christ's ascension and session, right? Jesus ascends and is seated at the right hand of the Father to be king over all creation. So he's the second Adam. He's ruling all of it now as God's steward. Given all the authority God the Father grants to the Son, accomplished by what the Son did on earth and earned it, in a sense, the right to do this and won the victory. And, this gets into some really interesting territory. How do we talk about this best? What I want to just kind of limit it to is understanding that this Christ isn't just a son of David, it's a descendant of David, and not necessarily of like a king like David, just like David, a king of Judah, like Judah was used to in its history. It's a different king. He will be a physical descendant of David, which Jesus is. And he will also be David's Lord somehow superior to him. And I think the big solution to this, of course, is pointing to the doctrines of the incarnation. Jesus is the Lord incarnate. Jesus is, God's embodied activity to save his people Israel. In the Messianic mission, the Messiah is doing this, is being this. It's a mystery. It is a mysterious thing. It's kind of left to us to figure out. There's a lot of that in Mark, where it's, shh, be quiet, don't talk about it, and also, you say it. Right? That's what Jesus does all the time throughout the Gospels is, you say what you think. And he doesn't necessarily say, look at me, because once he does that, it's not how it plays out in the Scriptures and how it's supposed to work. Other people point to Jesus and recognize him. Jesus does the stuff, say da-da-da-da-da-da, declares his messiahship. But then he kind of puts it on us to declare, what does that mean? What does that entail? Who is this man? Who is this? Who is this God, really? And Jesus is basically saying, he is the king, he is the priest in his own temple, the high priest has authority over him, he's the God of Israel in his temple, which is always important whenever he's driven out from the temple, or he drives out others, or he calls doom upon the temple, right? It's kind of especially if he's driven out of the temple, it's kind of an Ichabod situation, right? The glory of the Lord departs from his own temple, and he's free to do that. Look at Ezekiel. But what we see here is a conundrum that the scribes and the Pharisees don't know the most important things. This is a conundrum for them. Psalm 110:1 was a riddle for them. How do we justify this? Who is this? What is this Messiah? Who is the Son of David? How is he able to be this way? And Jesus really pushes that nerve. He does this all the time with us and in his actual ministry, right? Back in the day he was walking on earth, really pinpointing it. And it reminds me of Nicodemus in John 3. Nicodemus, are a teacher of the people, a teacher of the law, and you don't know these things. These are the most important things to know about Holy Scripture, about basically who and what I am, what God's doing for his people. Of course, it's a surprise. And so the leadership of Israel, the religious teachers and so forth, who are supposed to be guiding Israel in the right way aren't able to answer the most important questions, and they're rejecting God himself in human form. Not just in human form, right? In human flesh. And it's a serious thing. It's just everything is so on the line, so extreme in a good way. With the Gospels, with Mark, as we escalate. And again, we're in the temple, and Jesus is talking about this and declaring obliquely, kind of from the side, coming in from the side of what he's up to, what he is, who he is, and what he's going to do. And he's going to be revealed in his passion and his laying down of himself on the cross. And that's a great thing for us to be meditating upon, that Jesus is this one that David called Lord. And this coming Sunday, we're going to recognize that Abraham recognizes, in a sense, Jesus as superior. Jesus, before Abraham was, I am. Jesus, of the priesthood of Melchizedek gets offerings from Abraham. He gets homage from Abraham. This sort of point of even the greatest figures of the Old Testament aren't as great as Jesus. Jesus is the God of Israel, but he's also this anointed human, suffering servant, king, priestly, prophetic figure that is bringing it all to pass for Israel's sake. And God is doing stuff through Jesus. God is Jesus. Jesus is God, I should say. And it's just this amazing thing that it seems like nobody could have expected this. And Jesus is just doing it. And we're kind of left stunned saying, what are we going to do? Right? What's our response? Are we going to love the Lord our God, or love our neighbor? Are we going to live out our whole duty towards him? Are we going to act like he's God? And are we going to treat him like our Lord? And instead of always questioning his authority or doubting necessarily, like not following him, not giving him, not trusting him, not communicating with him, even if we're frustrated with him. Instead, just turning the cold soldier and it's like, you're not giving me the goodies I want. You're not giving me the bread I want. The eternal bread you offer, I don't care about that. I want the bread that perishes and, goes bad after a while. I just want to be fed for a while. Instead of, you are the bread of heaven, I want to be part of the loaf. I want to be part of, in the baskets. I want to be these 12, of numbered among Israel, numbered among the elect, and even suffer for that, for your sake, O Lord. So I think those are some good things to kind of consider as we go through this. Who's Jesus? What is Jesus? And what does he expect of us? And what does God expect of us? What's God doing through Jesus? And then what does he expect of, what kind of response is the wise response to that? So with that, I'll bid you all a good night. I hope you rest well, and I hope to see you tomorrow.